In today's video we're reviewing the Fractal Epoch. It's a compact mid-tower chassis. It shares the same core design as the Fractal North but with a few tweaks. It supports radiators up to 360mm at the front. It has tempered glass or solid side panel options. The case features optimized airflow with multiple fan mounting points and supports ATX, Micro-ATX and Mini-ITX motherboards. We'll cover build quality, cooling performance and component compatibility. So let's get started. So this is the Fractal Epoch. It has been around in the UK for a few months. I think it launched in July or sometime around then, based on the Fractal North with a few tweaks. So that's why we still want to take a look at this case. It is available in several different colour options and configurations, so you can get it either in black or white with clear and lightly tinted tempered glass on the black version, with or without RGB, or you can get it in a completely plain solid sided version in black too. The non-RGB versions are around £95 to £100, RGBs between £110 to £120 in the UK, and the solid sided non-RGB version is a little cheaper, around £90. Those prices depend on where you look. CCL scans, etc. have slightly different pricing on this at the moment. The Fractal Epoch features a clean modern aesthetic with a focus on simplicity and sleek lines, equipped with ventilated mesh front and top panels to promote natural airflow. It's a compact mid-tower that accommodates graphics cards up to 372mm in length and CPU coolers up to 170mm in height. It supports ATX, Micro-ATX and Mini-ITX motherboards. It's designed for ease of use with tool-free access panels to the front, top and side, and handy cable management with cable routing grommets and straps to maintain a clean build. So as I say, it's a mid-tower chassis. Dimensions are reasonably compact for a mid-tower, so it's got quite a small footprint, takes up less space on your desk. Dimensions are 433.3 by 215 by 455.3mm. In terms of motherboard support, as I say, it supports up to ATX, no eATX, there just isn't room for an eATX motherboard, but you can install ATX, Micro-ATX or Mini-ITX motherboards. One thing worth noting is it doesn't support back connect, so motherboards with connectors on the reverse side, there's no support for that. The front panel connectivity is at the top of the case. At the front, on there you've got a USB Type-C 20GB port, two USB Type-A 5GB per second ports, and a single 3.5mm combined audio jack. All of the outer panels can be removed tool-free, so the tempered glass side panel, which would be installed here, there's just a couple of thumb screws to loosen, and then that slides backwards and removes. It's same for the right hand panel. Again, a couple of thumb screws, loosen those off, that slides back and the panel is removed. It's a plain steel side panel on this side of the case. There's no sound dampening material and there's no vents for fans because there's no side mounted fans. Front panel's really easy to remove. Just grab it at the bottom. It really easily hooks out and it's just clipped in place on these two clips at the bottom there, quick release clips at the bottom. You'll notice that the front panel is completely mesh and vented. It is just a single layer of mesh though, so the front panel acts as the dust filter too, which potentially is less restrictive than having a mesh front panel and an additional dust filter. The top panel also removes tool free. Unlike the side panels which has screws to remove, this just has a little tab at the back. Just slide it backwards and then that lifts off very easily again. It's very similar to the front panel, ultrafine mesh. There's no additional dust filter in there. The only dust filter in the system, or the only removable dust filter in the system, is on the floor of the case at the back where the power supply fan is. That just slides backwards and pulls out, and it's the nylon mesh type dust filter on a plastic frame, so the better type of dust filter. It's really easy to remove and insert. This little side panel here is also removable, which is good because it gives you improved access when you're installing the motherboard, graphics card and a radiator at the front if you want to install a radiator. There's just a thumb screw at the top there, loosen that off, slide it backwards a little and then it pulls out. Again, really easy to remove and it's easy to install back to the case again once you've installed the hardware. With a compact case like this, you don't have a lot of space up at the top, and because it's compact in terms of the height and the length, you can only install 360mm radiators at the front of this case. It does come with some fans pre-installed. It comes with 3 Fractal 120mm momentum fans at the front. You can install up to 3 120mm fans at the front of 240mm fans, or up to a 360mm radiator at the front. So that also includes a 280, 240 or 120. But because of the compact dimensions, you can only install up to a 240mm radiator at the top. So that does limit your cooling options a little at the top. In a gaming system with a high-end graphics card, I usually like to install the CPU cooler radiator at the top, but with this you can only install a 360 at the front, so it does limit your options in terms of cooling a little. You have to sacrifice that, I guess, for these more compact dimensions and a smaller footprint and less space taken up on your desk. So as I say, at the top it's up to a 240mm radiator or AIO, or up to 220 or 2 140mm fans. In the rear it doesn't come with any fans pre-installed, but it has got this perforated mesh at the rear, so it should allow for some natural airflow through. You can install up to a 120mm fan or radiator in there. Maximum graphics card length. Now this all depends on whether you have a radiator installed up front or not. Doesn't make any difference with fans because they're installed outside of the front inner panel. But if you've got a radiator installed at the front, it reduces the graphics card length down to 342mm. If you remove the radiator and you're running a radiator at the top or an air cooler, you can have a graphics card in there up to 372mm long. You can see we've got the Gigabyte RTX 5080 gaming OC installed in here, and that just fits a couple of millimeters to spare between the end of the graphics card and the radiator there. So that's quite a big card. It's a 5080, so still, even with a radiator in there, you still will be able to install a high-end graphics card. There's a full cover power supply shroud at the bottom. There is a large cutout here for the radiator, though. You can potentially fit a thick radiator, push-pull fans. There is a vent on top of the power supply shroud at the back, but it's not for installing fans for additional graphics card cooling. But there is that perforation on top of the power supply shroud, so potentially you could run the power supply either way around with the fan facing up if you wanted to. There's a couple of cutouts for cable management on top of the power supply shroud too, but once you get all the system installed and the power supply in position, the cutout at the back here are almost totally blocked by the power supply, so it's a good idea to connect up your HD audio, and if you need to route any RGB cables or fan cables through there, it's a good idea to do that first before fully installing the power supply. There are a couple of larger cable cutouts down the side of the motherboard trace, and then at the top there's only one cutout towards the rear, and that's for passing through EPS, and if you have any fan headers right up at this side towards the back of the case. One thing to notice that is a little frustrating when you're doing the installation in this case is the lack of cutouts up here at the top. So if you need to route through cables to fans or to a AIO pump, you have to stretch them from the front to here. It looks a little messy, but it's not too bad. You see, I've got a 360mm AIO installed in here. If you want to run it in an air cooling configuration, you can fit CPU air coolers up to 170mm tall. If we just whip it round to the other side, you can see what's happening with the cable management. It's actually really shallow, the cable management channel at this side behind the motherboard tray. There are several eyelets here to tie cables down to, but you're only going to get something like your thickness of the EPS cables down there. You won't be able to manage the main 24-pin cable or anything else down here, but towards the front here, it's offset and it's deeper, so it's about 30mm in this main cable channel here, which is just enough for a basic system like this to manage all the cables and still be able to get the side panel on without the side panel bulging or anything. You've also got a few straps here, so a few Velcro straps for neatening up the cable management. And to be fair, it does a pretty good job. As you can see, I managed to get everything in there and it's looking neat and tidy. It wasn't too difficult to do either, so in terms of cable management, yes, it's a bit tight around this side, but down this main channel here, there should be plenty of space to manage cables for a basic gaming system. You also have a few options in terms of storage. So there's this panel on the back of the motherboard tray here. On here you can install two 2.5-inch SSD drives, just a single thumb screw that holds that in place and it just lifts off. You can install your drives to it and then put it back in position really easily. Underneath the power supply shroud there's an additional 2 more drive bays, 3.5 and 2.5-inch combos, so you can install either a 3.5 or 2.5-inch drive there, depending on the cooling configuration. So if you're running a radiator at the front here, it will interfere with the front drive bay. However, Fractal's thought about that and you can remove it completely, leave it out of the system, but if you do need to use it, if it is essential, you can then mount it underneath the power supply shroud and it's out of the way of a 360mm radiator. But if you're running it in air-cooled mode, you can just leave both of the drive bays attached to the floor. Power supply is a regular ATX power supply. To install it, there's a panel at the back, a couple of thumb screws, just loosen those off. The panel removes, fix the panel to your power supply and then slide the whole unit in from the back. There's plenty of space down there, so depending on what you have on these drive bays or whether you have these drive bays in at all will depend on the size of the power supply. At the back it's a pretty standard looking layout, so at the top at this side you've got the perforations, the vented section. You can install 120mm fan up here, cutout for the rear motherboard I/O, 7 PCIe slots below that, and then at the bottom is the ATX power supply mount.
If you're looking for a new chair, then definitely go and check out boolies.co.uk. They offer a whole host of gaming and office chairs that come in a variety of different finishes and different colours.
In terms of accessories included with the case, there isn't a lot. There's no additional front panels or extra fan brackets or anything like that, but you do get the basics. So you get all the installation screws that you'll need for installing the system, so the motherboard screws, drive bay screws, some rubber anti-vibration mounts for drives, and you get a few zip ties for cable management. They'll come in a little box, and you also get the Fractal Epoch user guide. Typical with Fractal cases, it's really detailed and a very easy user manual to follow. It gives you good instructions of how to install a system. The fans that come in with it, as I say, are the Fractal Momentum fans. There's 3 of these installed in the case, and they use this same daisy chain design that uses the USB Type-C style connector. It's not a USB Type-C connector though. You can't connect them up to USB Type-C, and they split off to standard 4-pin PWM and 3-pin 5-volt ARGB headers, and they're quite nice looking fans with RGB lighting if you pick the RGB versions. Daisy chain cabling means there's no fan hub required. There's no fan hub included with the case, and there isn't one needed because all these fans just connect up to a single motherboard header. So let's take a look how the Fractal Epoch performs in terms of noise output and thermal performance. For the test system, I'm using an AMD Ryzen 7 9800 X3D CPU. Motherboard is an MSI Mag X870 Tomahawk Wi-Fi. Graphics card is a Gigabyte RTX 5080 Gaming OC. For memory, it's 32GB, so two 16GB modules of G.Skill Trident Z5 RGB DDR5 6000. For storage, it's a 1TB Corsair MP600 Elite PCIe Gen 4 NVMe M.2 SSD. The CPU cooler is an MSI MPG Core Liquid P13 360mm AIO installed up at the front because we can't install it at the top, there isn't space for it. Power supply is the FSP Hydro PTMX Pro 1200 watt. Chassis is obviously the Fractal Epoch. It's the black RGB with light tint version. One thing with this installation is you will want to remove the stock fans from the front to install your AIO, unless you decide to run those with the AIO, but you can recycle those and use them in the top and the rear, and I'll be checking out if that has any impact on the noise and thermal performance. If you want to check out the full testing methodology, there's a written review page over at kitguru.net. All the testing methodology is on there. For the thermal load, it's a combined Cinebench R23 and 3D Mark Speedway stress test run simultaneously for 30 minutes. We tested the case thermals with a 360mm AIO as intake at the front, and with the case in several different configurations. The default configuration shown in the charts is with a 360mm AIO at the front, no exhaust fans, and with all panels installed. In the default configuration, the case does a good job of keeping the CPU and GPU cool, with average load temperatures of 54 degrees C over ambient for the CPU and 50 degrees C over ambient for the GPU, which is good for a compact case. Adding a couple of fans to the top as exhaust has a small effect on GPU temperature, dropping it by 2 degrees C, but the CPU temperature is unchanged. There's no additional mechanical change in either the CPU or GPU by adding a rear exhaust fan, but removing the side panel lowers the GPU temperature further. So the case has some restriction with the mesh panels, but it's not excessive, and the temperature of both the CPU and GPU are well under control with all panels fitted. Since component temperature under high load is controlled in the Epoch, noise output in any configuration is quite low when the fan curve is set manually. Adding top and rear fans doesn't increase noise at all, as the internal system temperature is kept low, so fans don't need to ramp up above 1000 RPM. Removing the side panel actually decreases noise a little, as the GPU is running cooler and at a lower fan speed also. So thermal performance for a compact case like this with a high-end system are pretty decent. The noise levels are fine for a gaming PC. Mesh panels, high airflow, low temperatures, so there isn't going to be too much noise coming from it, and it all depends obviously on how you set your fan profiles. A couple of things worth mentioning about the installation. So there's very little space at the top, so if you have got a AIO radiator or even fans installed here, you might have difficulty connecting up cables at the top of the system, especially the EPS cables at the top. I would have really liked to have seen this top panel being removable in some way, so that if you did maybe forget to install your EPS during the installation and you've got a radiator and fans up there, you'd be able to just loosen that off and lift it up a little out of the way and connect up cables. If you ever want to change the configuration of the system down the line, it is useful to have a removable top panel. It just allows a little bit more space to get in there and connect up cables. I would have also at the top liked to have seen another cable cutout up here. As I said earlier, if you're routing cables from a front mounted AIO and fans, they have to come across from this grommet here into the motherboard. It would obviously look a little neater if there was an extra cutout here and you could route them through there. Another thing with cable cutouts, on the power supply shroud, the one right at the back, again, like I say, if you've got the power supply installed, it's more or less blocked off completely, that cutout. So it's very difficult to connect up the HD audio, or if you've got any RGB headers on the motherboard at the back there, it's going to be quite difficult to push the cables through and get them connected with the power supply in position. I would have liked to have seen, especially at this price range, I would have liked to have seen a integrated GPU anti-sag bracket. As you can see, there isn't one, and I'm not using one on here, and there is a little bit of sag in this RTX 5080 gaming OC from Gigabyte. The card does come with its own anti-sag bracket, but because it's so close to the radiator and you've got this large cutout in the power supply shroud, I couldn't use that either. So for this kind of price range, that's something I would have liked to have seen integrated into the case. There's also no built-in fan hub. Not a big deal, as I say, the fans that come with the case, they're all daisy chained to each other, so they only just use that one single fan header and RGB connection. But if you add extra fans, then you are going to need to either use daisy chained fans again or extra connections on the motherboard. You need to make sure you've got enough fan connections. I like the compact dimensions. It means it will save space if you want to put this on your desk. Smaller footprint, and it's not too deep either, so it's not going to be too imposing and in your face if you have got it on your desk. Thermal performance for a compact case is good, and the hardware support, even though it's compact, it still supports all the high-end hardware you're going to need for a decent gaming system, and it's available in those different color options, so you can have it in white or black, with or without RGB. The only few minor points are those lack of cable cutouts in key areas, a bit of compromise in terms of cooling with only being able to install the 360mm radiator at the front, but otherwise it's a decent case and it's reasonably priced, between £100 and £120 for the tempered glass and RGB version. But there is some really strong competition in this price range from the likes of Corsair with the Frame 4000D, Lian Li with the Lancool 217, etc. So it might be a good idea to shop around before running out to buy this. So that's the Fractal Epoch. Let me know what you think of this case in the YouTube comment section. If you've enjoyed watching this video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up and subscribe to Kit Guru. If you enjoy what we do here at Kit Guru and you want to help support us, you can always head over to our store and pick up some merch, or you could subscribe to our Patreon. We're also on TikTok, and if you want to catch up on all the in-depth technical reviews, head over to our website.